I was sitting on the back porch, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the wind stir the leaves when my 13-year-old niece, Ava, flopped into the chair next to me. She was scrolling through her phone like usual, occasionally smirking at something on the screen. We were both quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Out of nowhere she chuckled, one of those short, amused little laughs that make you look up. "What's funny?" I asked, smiling. She tilted her head and said, half laughing, "Mom says if you vanished tomorrow, no one would even care." Just like that. No warning. Like she was quoting a meme. I blinked. My heart skipped, then thudded like I'd tripped down a stair. "What?" Ava shrugged. "She says stuff like that all the time. I don't think she means it." She said it like we were gossiping about TV characters, not real people. Not me. I looked out toward the trees, trying to keep my face still. I didn't want her to see the flicker of something that might look like pain. But I felt it. That comment, that sentence, lodged in me like a splinter I couldn't reach. Ava didn't notice. She went back to her phone. I've always had a weird relationship with my sister, Rachel. She's 5 years older and somehow always 10 steps ahead. Married early, 3 kids, big house, community potlucks, the works. I've been the drifter, the artsy one. I work freelance, no kids, moved around a lot. I'm the one who sends birthday gifts from a different address every year. Rachel tolerates me. Or maybe she used to. Lately, I felt more like a tolerated presence than a person. The thing is, I came out here to help her. Her husband's been sick, chemo, hospital visits, stress, and I dropped everything to fly across the country and stay for a while. Watch the kids, cook, clean, listen when she needed to vent. I never asked for anything. Not even thanks. That comment kept echoing. No one would even care. I didn't say anything for the rest of the day. That night, while everyone was asleep, I stood in the kitchen, lit only by the glow of the fridge, staring at the picture Rachel had taped up. The one from a beach trip years ago, where I was holding Ava's hand and Rachel was laughing at something off camera. It looked like we were happy. Like I belonged. I pulled out my suitcase the next morning. Packed quiet. Ava caught me in the hallway. "Are you leaving?" she asked, a little confused. I nodded. "Yeah. I think it's time." She looked guilty. "Was it what I said yesterday?" I gave her a half smile. "It wasn't you. You just repeated something. Sometimes hearing things out loud makes you realize they were true all along." She hugged me. It was awkward, tall teenager trying to make up for something she didn't fully understand, but it still mattered. I left a note for Rachel on the table. Simple. No guilt trips. Just, "Thanks for letting me stay. Take care of each other." I haven't heard from her since. Not a call. Not a text. And maybe that's the answer I needed. Maybe disappearing doesn't mean vanishing into thin air. Sometimes it's just walking away quiet and seeing who notices. So far, no one has. It's been 3 weeks since I left Rachel's house. I'm back in my small apartment, the one bedroom above a bookstore that smells like old paper and cinnamon from the bakery next door. The radiator hums at night, and the floor creaks like it's trying to speak in secret. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. The first few days were quiet. Peaceful even. I slept in. I made coffee and finished it while it was still hot. I painted again for the first time in months. I started a canvas without knowing what it would become. It felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. But then that silence started to stretch. No missed calls. No texts. Not even a meme from Ava, which she used to send daily. It hit me in strange ways. Like when I laughed at something and instinctively reached for my phone, only to remember no one was waiting on the other end. No one was expecting anything from me. Not anymore. One night, I found myself staring at my contact list, hovering over Rachel's name. Just to say hey. Just to see if she'd answer. But I didn't press it. I deleted the draft message. Instead, I went back to the canvas and added darker strokes. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Real paper. Real handwriting. It was from Ava. There were some doodles at the bottom. Little stick figures of me and her, one of them holding a giant coffee mug. She signed it with a heart and her name, in that messy mix of cursive and block letters teens use when they're trying to seem older than they are. I sat on the floor with the letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt seen. For the first time in a while, it felt like I hadn't just evaporated. Someone noticed. Noticed me. It wasn't Rachel. It wasn't the person I'd dropped everything to help. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the people who matter most aren't always the ones you think should care, but the ones who do, even quietly. I wrote Ava back. I told her about the bookstore and the painting and that I missed her too. I told her to keep drawing even if it's just stick figures. I didn't mention her mom. I don't know if Rachel even knows Ava wrote me. I haven't heard from her still. But part of me is done waiting. Sometimes, it takes losing your place in someone else's story to realize you should be writing your own. And mine's not over. Not even close. A week after I sent the letter to Ava, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Something about it felt heavy. But curiosity got the better of me. It was Rachel. Her voice was tight. Not angry, controlled. Like she had rehearsed whatever she was about to say. I heard Ava wrote you, she began. No greeting. No, how are you? I let the silence answer. She sighed, then said, I didn't know she was going to do that. I figured. Another pause. Then, you just left. No warning. I almost laughed. You mean after your daughter repeated that if I disappeared, no one would care? You're right. I should have stayed for brunch. Rachel inhaled sharply. She's a kid. She didn't mean it. She was quoting you. That landed. I could feel it over the phone. That dense, weighted pause. I didn't mean it either, she finally said. I was venting. I say things sometimes. You know that. I used to excuse it. I think I finally stopped. Rachel was quiet again, but this silence felt different. Like something shifting. Then she spoke, slower this time. You were there when I needed you. I know I didn't say it. I didn't know how. Everything with Mark, it's been hell. I softened a little at the mention of her husband. I know it has. I wasn't expecting praise, Rachel. Just not, whatever that was. I messed up. Her voice cracked slightly. And I think I've been angry at everyone, especially the people who showed up, because they remind me of what I can't fix. I let that sink in. Sometimes people apologize without saying the word. And sometimes saying I messed up is as close as they get. I'm not mad at Ava, I said. She's a kid. She tells the truth when no one else will. Rachel gave a tiny, tired laugh. Yeah, she does. Then, almost hesitantly, would you come back? Even just to visit? I stared out the window for a while. My painting stood unfinished on the easel across the room, bright strokes and deep shadows blending into something new. I'm not sure, I said honestly. But I'll keep writing to Ava. I think she'd like that. I nodded, knowing she couldn't see me. Me too. We hung up after that. No dramatic ending. No promises. But for the first time in a long while, the space between us didn't feel like a canyon. More like a long hallway with a light on at the end. Ava wrote me again that week, this time with a photo of her latest drawing. 2 figures standing on a bridge, one handing the other a flower. Underneath, in pencil, she wrote, If someone disappears, you notice the silence most. I pinned it to the wall above my desk. And I noticed the silence less that day. After that call, things felt like they were shifting. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but shifting nonetheless. I didn't rush back to Rachel's place. I told myself I needed to find my footing first, to figure out where I stood without all the noise. But I started writing to Ava every week. Sometimes it was just a few sentences. Other times I poured out things I hadn't said aloud to anyone. I sent her little photos of paintings, sketches, sometimes silly captions or dumb jokes. It felt good to connect with someone who still saw me. Then one Saturday the phone rang again. This time it was Ava. Her voice was lighter, less guarded. Hey, she said. Mom said maybe you could come for dinner next weekend. I hesitated. You sure she meant that? Yeah, she said, a little laugh in her voice. She said it's time we all try. I could almost hear the hope behind that simple invitation. I agreed. The day I showed up at Rachel's door, Ava ran out first, arms wide like she was about to take flight. She hugged me so hard I thought she might crush me. It felt like the first genuine embrace I'd had in months. Inside, Rachel looked different too, tired, yes, but softer. Less guarded. Dinner was awkward at first. Rachel and I stumbled over small talk and old wounds, but Ava was the glue that held it together. She kept us laughing, sharing stories, reminding us what family meant beyond all the hurt. Later, when we were clearing dishes, Rachel pulled me aside. Thank you, she whispered. For not giving up. I nodded. I almost did. She smiled, a little sad. Me too. That night, I stayed over for the first time since I left. We didn't fix everything in one night. We didn't erase the silence instantly. But we started. And sometimes starting is enough. The days after that dinner felt different. Like the air in the house had finally shifted, making space for something new. I wasn't just a visitor anymore. I was part of the story again, messy and complicated, but real. Ava and I kept writing to each other, but now we texted too. She sent me pictures of her drawings, her school projects, even selfies with those goofy faces only teenagers can make. Sometimes she'd sneak little messages into the middle of group chats or tag me in memes that made me laugh. It was a quiet way of saying you're still here. Rachel and I started talking more honestly. Not always easy and not always comfortable, but necessary. We faced the things we'd buried under sarcasm and silence. The resentment, the expectations, the pain. We didn't solve it all, but we made room for forgiveness. One afternoon, as I was painting in the sunlit corner of the living room, Ava sat beside me, doodling in her notebook. She looked up and said, "I think Mom's proud you came back." I smiled. Me too. And in that moment, I realized maybe disappearing isn't about being noticed when you're gone. Maybe it's about showing up again, even when it feels impossible. Because sometimes the people who matter most are the ones willing to stay, to listen, to laugh, and to heal, together. Months passed and life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still rough days, moments when old frustrations bubbled to the surface, and silence crept back in. But the difference was, we no longer let it settle in like a shadow. Ava's laughter filled the house more often. Rachel started letting me help without the weight of resentment in her eyes. I found myself hosting movie nights with the kids, cooking messy dinners, and even joining in on their chaotic mornings. One rainy afternoon, Rachel and I sat on the porch, watching the drops race down the windows. She reached over, squeezed my hand, and said, "Thank you for not disappearing." I smiled softly. I almost did. But I realized sometimes, you have to step back to see what you're really missing. She nodded. And sometimes, it takes a kid's honesty to break through the walls. Ava's voice called from inside, "Come help me with my math homework." I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Maybe I wasn't the perfect sister or aunt, but I was here. Present. And that made all the difference. Because family isn't just about being noticed, it's about choosing to be seen, even when it's hard. A few weeks ago, I found myself sitting alone in the backyard, the evening sun casting long shadows over the garden. Ava came outside and plopped down next to me, her sketchbook balanced on her knees. She showed me a drawing, two figures, one reaching out to the other. "I drew this for you," she said softly. "Because you didn't disappear." It hit me harder than I expected. Not just because of the drawing, but because of what it meant. That I mattered, that I was part of something bigger than the silence I once thought defined me. I realized then that sometimes the loudest voices aren't the ones who shout the hardest. They're the ones who stick around when it's easier to walk away. And maybe that's the kind of love that really counts. I'm still learning how to be that person. How to be present without losing myself. But every day I'm a little better at it. Because in the end, disappearing isn't the problem. It's forgetting to come back that breaks you. Since that day, things have kept moving, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, but always forward. Ava and I have this unspoken bond now, built on honesty, laughter, and those little notes we send back and forth. She's growing up fast, but I see glimpses of that same stubborn spark in her eyes that help me keep going. Rachel and I aren't perfect, and we probably never will be. But we're learning to be honest, to say the hard things without breaking each other. It's messy and sometimes painful, but it's ours. I've started thinking about what family really means. Not just the people who share your blood, but the ones who show up, who stay, who care enough to fight for you. Sometimes, I still hear that old voice in my head, the one that wonders if anyone would notice if I disappeared. But now, I can answer it differently. Yes, someone would notice. Because I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Last night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of Ava's birthday parties, family trips, moments when we all looked happy without trying too hard. I realized how much time had slipped away while I was caught up in feeling invisible. I sent one of those photos to Ava this morning with a simple message, "Remember this day?" She replied almost instantly, "Yeah. We were so loud and crazy." And then, "Let's make more days like that." It felt like a small promise between us, a commitment to try, to show up, to build something better. I'm learning that healing isn't about forgetting the pain or pretending things are perfect. It's about choosing to keep moving forward even when the past still stings. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to remind us all that we matter, even when we think no one is watching. It's been nearly a year since I left Rachel's house for good, and yet here I am, still part of their lives, still woven into the messy tapestry of family. I'm no longer the distant aunt who disappeared. I'm the one who comes for holidays, helps with homework, and shares those quiet, unscripted moments that matter most. Rachel and I don't have all the answers, but we've learned to talk, to listen, and to admit when we're wrong. Ava's laughter fills the rooms in a way that feels like home, not just noise. I still have days when I wonder if I'm enough. But now, instead of disappearing, I reach out. Instead of fading away, I stay. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to simply show up. And that, I've learned, is how you stop being invisible. Lately, I've been thinking about how much we all crave to be seen, and how easily that gets tangled up in misunderstandings and silence. When Ava laughed and repeated her mom's words, it felt like a dagger. But now I realize it was also a kind of call for attention, a messy way of saying, hey, notice me too. I'm learning to listen better, not just to the words but to what's underneath them. Rachel, Ava, even myself, we're all trying to be heard even when we don't have the right language or the courage to say what we really mean. Sometimes healing looks like small steps, showing up at dinner, answering a text, sending a sketch, or just sitting quietly beside someone who needs you. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to try. Because in the end, being noticed isn't about grand gestures. It's about the simple, stubborn act of choosing each other again and again. And that's a story I'm still writing. I never expected a single sentence, something so simple and hurtful, to change everything. When Ava repeated that line about no one caring if I vanished, it felt like I was already gone. Invisible. Forgotten. But that moment forced me to see what I hadn't been willing to face, that I needed to show up, not just for them but for myself. Coming back wasn't easy. It meant vulnerability, hard conversations, and confronting the cracks in our family. It meant forgiving, not forgetting, and learning how to be present even when it's uncomfortable. Now, when I look at Ava's drawings, hear Rachel's voice, or catch those quiet moments of laughter, I know I belong. Not because anyone said it, but because I chose to stay. Disappearing might be easy. But choosing to stay, to be seen, and to keep trying, that's where real strength lives. And that's the story I'm proud to share.